Thursday night, everybody. We're here almost every week, but every now and then things will pop up. And we hope to see our third little musketeer pop into the show here in a little bit. Um, Sucks to have a real job, I guess.
That's what they tell me. Well, happy Thursday night. I got my gloves off and I'm ready to engage in verbal sparring with you.
I really thought about stealing a clip as much as I pick on Matt Farah on his 999th episode, which he never pointed out in the episode, and I didn't get that. I might have said that a couple weeks ago. He interviewed Jerry Seinfeld, and Jerry Seinfeld's favorite number is 9. He likes things with nines in them. Hence, I think the reason he agreed to do that show. But I can't remember if Farah directly asked Seinfeld or if it was one of the listener questions, but their feelings about driving gloves. And both of them really agreed. Absolutely no driving gloves. I thought that was a nice plug for the show.
That is interesting. I am a habitual glove wearer, although not in the driving glove sense, just that my hands get cold so easily that
we know you're a thief.
I never want to leave my prints behind. Burn them off regularly. Yeah. I remember being introduced to that concept in an old episode of the 1966 Batman TV show when they capture the Joker. He's in disguise, of course. It's Cesar Romero, but so you know it's the Joker. They go, well, we'll fingerprint him with the Bat fingerprint kit. And he goes, oh, no, they've been burned off. And he's disguised as this boat captain. He goes, oh, yeah, I just touched a hot manifold. So I was like, it really made an impression on me, like the dedication you have to have as a master criminal to burn your prints off. And I think they grow back. So you have to keep doing it.
I believe they do. And I've always heard sanding off your prints. But the one that seems to make the most sense to me is the guys that just put super glue on their fingertips.
Sure. Well, and then in Gone in 60 Seconds, they put fake fingerprints over their real fingerprints, so they all leave Elvis's prints behind.
Yeah. See, I don't know if that concept. But I guess that concept would be work. It would be like putting Scotch tape over your finger, wouldn't it?
I suppose, yeah. I don't, and now they're saying that the idea that fingerprints are all unique is actually probably untrue. The same is true of snowflakes, that they're highly unlikely to repeat, but they do occasionally.
I saw an article that was talking about that, but it went on to basically say there can be duplicate fingerprints, but it's on the same person.
Interesting.
So
I mean, it's related to like the whorling your hair grows in, right?
Something like that, but it's, supposedly your ring finger on your right hand might be the same fingerprint as the middle finger on your left hand or something. I think.
Well, how's that going to get me off for a crime? That's not helpful, John. I guess I'll go back to burning them off.
Yeah. And dip them in super glue.
That sounds a lot more pleasant. I mean, every kid dips their fingers in the Elmer's glue as a in elementary.
You probably could get away with Elmer's glue, but I mean, if you put a little bit of super glue on your finger and spray some activator on it, you'd be done. And I mean, if you cut your finger, well, I guess that wouldn't work. I say if you just took some razor blades to the top of your fingers, but then you would just have your fingerprint with slices in it, I guess.
Yeah, probably no slicing. I mean, and these days it's not just that. I mean, if you so much as drop a hair on the crime scene, they've got you. If they want to devote the budget to it,
right? It's I think it's much more advanced than what they tell us on TV, and it's pretty damn well advanced. I guess we just have to sit down. Maybe we get Dexter on here and we interview him and he can give us some pointers.
Wait, the fictional serial killer Dexter you're referring to?
No, the real that's a true story, is it?
I don't know, man. I don't.
Yeah.
Real life's scary enough without me watching that stuff as entertainment. So, I mean, Batman '66. That's one thing.
I don't remember Batman. You mean Batman in 1966, or is there Batman 66?
No, that's just. I think Batman '66 is that shorthand that people use for that 1966 Adam West
Oh, okay.
Batman TV show with the Lincoln Futura and all that.
You mean the George Barris custom Batmobile?
Yeah. Did Dean Jeffries do that one too?
Yeah, that.
No, that actually is a legit Barris build, I think. But the Monkey Mobile. Oh no. Seems that Derek's knocking on the outside of the podcast, unable to get in.
No, that said something about the other video thing he's on. That I just just turn your mic off and start podcasting. You don't need to pay attention to that crap.
Well, just stream us in on the video. We could participate. We could probably provide helpful insights to whatever he's doing.
We could, I guarantee. I really wanted to talk to him about some things, probably off air, because he really wouldn't want to talk about them on air.
Just hit him with that stuff when he shows up. I'm sure he'll love it.
Yeah,
you can always just decline to answer.
The NCM fiasco with their director.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't believe that. Like, what, the guy ran a restoration parts company that went under with a bunch of people's orders unfulfilled, and people thought that it was kind of sketchy that he went directly from that to a management position there.
Yeah, in like 3 months. I mean, literally directly. It's like I applied for the job, they offered it to me, so I went bankrupt. And then there was something else that came out about him, but I don't know anything. We're not going to ask Derek about it because I really don't want to put him on the spot.
No.
He definitely would say no comment. But that was just an interesting thing in the museum world. And ironically, right around the time of the National Automotive Museum conference or something.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Kentucky.
Yeah, I don't really know enough about it to comment besides to say that, boy, it looked shady from the outside. But, I do understand that, strategic bankruptcy filings are a business strategy and considered to be a legitimate one, but it definitely leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, especially those of us who don't make our livings as sophisticated businessmen on a day-to-day basis.
It's a very just practice in business and can be used to your advantage if you know how to do it. But it does, even though it is a tool that businesses can use, it does leave a bad taste in other business people's mind, even if they know it's going to happen. We'll take, for instance, a gentleman who used to have a reality show who's had 4 very popular bankruptcies. You can bet he's PO'd when people declare bankruptcy against him. So.
Oh, yes. A handshake used to mean something in this country, John. It used to mean something.
Yeah, and our cars.
It still meant you probably better get it in writing.
Say, and our cars didn't used to be rolling computers.
Yeah, I often muse on the appeal of the electromechanical versus the purely electronic in the automobile, because stuff like mechanical breaker points and stuff like electricity doesn't scare me, but when it just goes in and something happens in a solid state manner that makes some decisions and then it comes out the other side, it's hard to get attached to that, I feel.
It's okay to have electricity create spark and fire in a car. You get much
it's
beyond
lightning.
that.
It's the basic wild electricity. Yeah.
You get much beyond that. I've had the conversation with many people, and I think I've even said it on this show occasionally, that I believe modern automobiles, if you took all the damn electrics off of them and turned them into just a motor that ran the rear wheels or the front wheels or all four wheels, they would never break. The things that
I mean,
break in,
isn't that essentially resto modding? I mean, resto modding is like a hugely abused term, but when you take it at its crudest sense, which is to say, I take a 68 Camaro and I put as many 2025 Camaro parts as I can on it without changing the fundamental package of the car, and I don't add any of the safety or smog stuff. That's what you've done, right? You've put all the good modern parts into the classic shell, stripped of their, the things that add 2,000 pounds to every modern car.
nah, I see. I even kind of disagree with that because if you put a modern drivetrain, so you take a Hellcat drivetrain out, out of a Challenger, and you go to put it in your 70 Dodge Charger, you still got to stick ECUs in with that. You still have to put O2 sensors because the motor needs all of that to run.
Right, that's where its efficiency and things come from. I mean, that and the machining tolerance.
Well, it's the efficiency, but I think the mechanically, if you put a carburetor on it and had the modern technology on building motors, it wouldn't fail because 90% of the stuff that goes into the shop, it seems, is electric. It's your power windows that don't work. It's failing to start because some computer is not talking. What code did it throw? You look at the code and then you figure out what electronic part failed.
Wait, and I suppose I'm looking at it from a slightly different perspective from you, because you're looking at a purely like reliability standard. Like, is this car going to cause me as few problems as possible? And I'm thinking more in terms of efficiency and longevity, because a carbureted car is just not going to last like one that's got more precise air fuel management. Much as I like carburetors, I have to recognize that, yeah, eventually, that's a 250,000 mile engine and not a 500,000 mile engine or whatever.
Yeah. But this is a dilemma. We last episode we talked about me car shopping. And that's a dilemma I get into, is like, how many miles is too many miles? Because it seems everything on the used market with any semblance of a reasonable price has six digits on the odometer. And, it's 15 grand for a truck with 180, 190,000 miles. And yeah, you go, well, I bet you I could get 250 or 260 out of that. But to me, that's 15. I'm agreeing to give you 15 grand so that I can get nothing back out of it. Is it better to spend 25 and buy something with 100,000 and drive it to 190 so that you can get 15 of your 25 back? Or are you better to buy something at 15 and hope and pray?
Yeah, sadly, with any used machine, it seems like the more you can spend, the better off you'll be in the long run, because you won't end up with as many issues to face down on the other side of the purchase. But you've, of course, got to evaluate every vehicle and make sure that it's worth the price that you're being asked to pay. But yeah, it always seems to pay off to pay more.
No. Well, I guess,
spend more.
Well, that's what they always tell you when you're buying a classic car. That's the rule is, what I want to say.
Yeah, well, and every car I've bought's been at the low end of the spectrum, and it's true, because I mean, it's always going to need something. Every time you drive it, you're going to go, oh, I got to take care of that noise. Oh, I hope that's not a new thing going wrong, or you're going to look at it and you go, gosh, I should do some body work on it there.
You go,
and then
you buy the best example of what you want and that you can afford. That, that's the standard rule. But I hear so many people that they go and they, even very, very wealthy people will go out and they'll buy a car. And then because they're wealthy and they're used to everything being perfect, then they put another 20 or 30 grand into whatever it is to get all the little things precise and exact. And, oh, it makes a little click from here and we got to get that click fixed. And, oh, the clock the 12 o'clock isn't perfectly vertical. It's 1 degree off. Now we've got to disassemble the dashboard to move the clock. It's.
But you know what they do if the car didn't have those things that they wanted to fix on it? They just go buy another car to fix other things on it. So it's just a human nature to want to always improve and go forward. And I mean, no, we're never satisfied. It's a double-edged sword because it builds our progress, but it also means that we're very bad at just going, oh, I'm happy now. I can rest.
Yeah. No, that's like when you build a custom car or you even doing a restoration. It's never done because there's always something to do or there's always something you want to change. And I used to be extremely guilty of that. And we all know I go through cars, at this point, I do a car a year.
Wow.
I mean, 53. And I looked at my list and updated my list just today. I have my 53rd car at 53 years old. So I've had one car a year for as long as I've been alive. I thought the number was a little bit higher, but it is what it is. And back in my high school days or whatever, JC Whitney catalog or whatever, or Sound of Peoria or Team Electronics, and I'm dumping thousands of dollars into, cars. And I have them less than 12 months, and then they trade them off and all that money goes away. And you go and do the next one and you go and do the next one. And at some point I just honestly, the last car I really put money into customizing was my 89 CRX SI when I did the ZC dual overhead cam motor swap. I think that's the last car I really put money into, because at that point I realized this is stupid. And that car went away, got my truck, etc. And within 5 or 6 years, I was buying my Lotus or Porsches and cars that I didn't need to modify. I might tweak my 987 Boxster. The only thing I did do it to customize it was put clear corner lamps in it, It's still $89, and did I get more? Did I get $89 more? I didn't get 89 cents more when I got rid of the car. Matter of fact, if you need amber 987 corner lamps, I think I have them.
Still on the shelf in the garage. Yeah,
exactly. I think they're still in storage. And, my Mini, I bought it. It had no stripes on it. I, spent $50 on vinyl and I did a custom design stripe myself. So it's, I think that's the extent I modified the Mini. Didn't even put a trailer hitch on it. And, my black car I live in, so a couple of the interior accessories, but that'll go with me to whatever car I buy to replace that car, provided I still have the same job, etc., that I need to travel that much. So I've just stopped. I buy a car stock and I drive it stock, and I guess when I get rid of it, I get rid of it. I didn't do anything to my Fusion. I didn't do anything to my SHO. I didn't do anything to my Transit Connect. Didn't do anything to my Velocitors. I mean, I guess my blue Velociter, my 2012 Velociter, I did do vinyl work to the front bumper and that to give it a slightly different accent. And I did do vinyl to the roof and gave it a black roof. But, again, a roll of vinyl's $90. So.
Have you lost your desire to personalize your cars, or you just don't find it practical at this point in your life?
Like I said, I came to the realization I don't keep a car long enough to justify putting that kind of money into them. Buy a set of wheels. Well, so I say good case scenario, I put $1,500 to get a set of wheels and tires, and I own the car a year, and the wheels and tire, I'm not going to get my money back out of them. I might have on the black car, since now I'm on the third set of tires since I've owned the car. The set it came with, the set I replaced, and that set's now been replaced. So I might be ahead on that one. But I don't know if it's I lost the desire, because when I get a new car, I still check the manufacturer's website and see what they have for aftermarket accessories. And I check, Amazon, and I check eBay and find the Facebook group. So, what could I do to this? What could I do to that? But I just usually don't buy anything. I mean, my F-150, I put a bed cover on that at the time was $1,100, and I think they're still about $1,200 or $1,300. I haven't priced them since April 2nd happened, and I do think I sold that bed cover and got $500 out of it, but I own the F-150 2.5 years. So was it worth? Yeah, actually it was worth $250 a year to have that bed cover, but I don't think I did anything else to that truck. So what's your
Reminds me
feeling?
of well, you're thinking about putting money into a car that and whether or not you get it back. I was just thinking back. I had a '64 Rambler American that I bought in 2012, 2013, something like that, in the fall, when I was between Falcons at the time, and I went to look at this car, and I talked the price down from something in the low thousands to, I don't know. I think he said, what's your cash offer? And thinking that he would tell me to pound sand, I said $750, and he said sold. So I found myself the owner of this Rambler, and it turned out to be a fabulous car. Like a really, if you ever find a 64-ish Rambler with the flathead 6 in it and the 3-speed, it's a pretty fun driving car. Had a lot of quirks, and was starting to fall apart in the back from rust. But I drove it for 9 months over the course of the winter. And one of the things that I did was plugged up the cooling system after I nicked the radiator fins doing the first spark plug change the car had ever had. And I ended up having that radiator record. And I think I paid, I don't know, $500 for this new radiator and a $750 Rambler. And I ended up selling the car for $900. But then when I did divide out, what I had spent on the car and versus what it would have cost to rent a car over the period when I had not had a different car, I probably did come out at least even, if not slightly money ahead for having owned that Rambler. And it was a hell of a lot more fun than some other forgettable rental or cheap car that I could have bought.
Let's see here. Where's my little cursor? Because our cheery co-host is hopped in to.
Hey, guys.
So now we'll probably have a radical topic change, because 33% of us don't know what the heck's going on.
What are we talking about?
Everything, anything.
Good. I don't want to talk about that.
We just analyze, like, I don't spend money modifying or customizing cars anymore because I don't own them long enough and I don't get my money out of them. And Dave was recapping.
Well, that's just a foolish thing to do. You restore them to original, John. You don't modify them.
John's cars come original from the factory, Derek. They're already that way.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
good.
have a whole team of union guys restore my car.
Oh, man. Actually, I just waited. I wanted to get here during No Driving Gloves After Dark. So I didn't want to go through the boring stuff at the beginning.
And we covered the National Corvette Museum news and that well before you got here. So
what news is that?
We don't think we want to touch on that, do you?
Yeah, I'm sorry. You'll have to watch the podcast to get that part of it. We're not going back.
Well, I do want to say congratulations to one of my former colleagues there. Bryce is the right guy for the job. So
I can't remember what name. How long has he had the job? 2 weeks or 4 weeks?
Bryce is the guy that has been there a long time. He's the new guy, and he's the right guy. So
yeah, we kind of talked about the wrong guy.
Well, we don't. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
No, yeah,
The
yeah.
guy that resigned that Bryce was
So-
put in place for. That's a whole nother topic.
We'll use this as a quick transition. Some of the listeners suggest things, and it's not my fault if they're not listening. 1984 Corvette, C4 Corvettes. What's the overall feeling on this? And I'm probably going to say C4 Corvette from 84 to 89. I don't want to get into
So
90.
the more pedestrian ones. And when did the LT1 come out? Was that was later?
I mean, the LT5, wasn't that it? The Mercury Marine.
Well, the
ZR?
LT5 was the real special one, but the 84 came with like an L89, and they used that for a few years. I wrote a whole buyer's guide on these cars at one point, but I've forgotten most of what I learned in that process because I'm never going to own one. But
Well,
yeah, they had a more conventional first gen style small block, and then they moved to that LT1 style later in their production run, and that's the one to have, short of the full on LT5 powered ZR1 or whatever it is.
That was introduced in LT1 for the C4 was like 91 or 92. I'm leaning to 92, but right around the early 90s.
Well, hey, you can look it up on Hemmings because I'm sure my writing is still out there.
Under Dave Conwell. So, so what's our feeling on the early C4?
I mean, you can pick them up as cheap as you need that Rambler.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, they are a great entry car to the classic sports car hobby. They are great handling cars. I mean, especially when you compare them to what the C3 was, which had handling issues in, especially on road courses. It wasn't the best car for that. The C4, the engineering behind the suspension, everything that came out with that car, made it a great handling car. And, currently for the prices they're selling at, I think it's a great entry level car to have a lot of fun in a sports car and, start your way into that classic sports car world. I mean, to me, I guess I'd liken it to, if you want to get into the antique car world, of course, you go out and get a Model T. If you want to get into the classic sports car world, I think a C4 Corvette is a great start for the price.
It's one of the few 80s cars that I'd be willing to own because none of the rest of them have that level of aftermarket support when it comes to all that plastic that's expiring now.
Do you feel there's an upside to buying an 84 to 89 Corvette, or do you think they're always going to be, say, in an 84 case, a $5,000 car, and an 89, maybe a $9,000, $12,000 car?
No, I mean, I think the value is going to go up on them as the value of all other Corvettes increase and people start spending more and more money on the other cars. It's going to, bring those C4 Corvettes up. So, I mean, I've seen a few that are starting to sell for more, right? I mean, I've as I just flip through for sale ads or, in the back of a magazine or online, you're starting to see, especially if it's a low mileage, well cared for one, they're starting to climb in price.
Mm-hmm. And don't discount all of the sort of silly, backward looking Gen Z nostalgia for this 80s and 90s period. This kids didn't live through it, but they like the trappings of it, whether they be beige trappings or neon trappings. And, they look at those cars and they go, that's a cool old car. To us, it's kind of a used Corvette, and amongst Corvette people, it's going to always be sort of the redheaded stepchild, barring maybe the post-performance C3s, which get even more abuse than the C4s. Unwarrantedly so, I should say. I mean, I'm a bit of a C3 loyalist. My dad had a 69, and my brother still has that. And, that was a hell of a car. It scared the crap out of me as a kid because he could drive it so hard. But I mean, and a C4 is going to be a fabulous, fun car to drive, even if you don't care about nostalgia and such, because even an L89 is going to be a powerful, peppy engine compared to, your more bread and butter stuff.
I've always thought the C3 kind of where the conversation was earlier before Derek joined us, is that we'll skip the chrome bumper C3s and we won't get to the 81 and 82, especially the 82 when they went to the Crossfire. But say the 75 to 80, I always felt that's a good Corvette to buy because you can drive them and you can fix them. If I decided to get it one and I wanted to go to Indianapolis, if I wanted to come visit you, Dave, I wouldn't hesitate to get in that car and drive it, because if it breaks, you can get engine parts for it in that at AutoZone. Where you get into the 82 and newer with the Crossfire and that, we start getting into those computers and stuff, and that stuff fails. That's not going to be a stocked part. But when your 350 Chevy fails, in a, whatever it is, whether it's, what I want to say, a starter or a solenoid or whatever, that stuff's going to be stocked because it fits across all the GM cars. Where the Corvette newer than 84 starts getting into all of these computers and things that can go wrong. So,
well, and that's my complaint about Corvette anyway, is like, how can you be a halo vehicle for the Chevrolet line when you don't have a single damn component in common with the rest of the Chevrolet line anymore? Like, I know that Zora Arkus Duntov and all these snobs couldn't wait to make it a world-class performance car, but to me, the basic idea back in 1953 of a sporty Chevrolet Roadster that you could drive to college and impress everybody was a really great idea. I mean, the car was intended as a Miata made from Bel Air parts. It was not intended as a Ferrari that were made from a bunch of one-off special parts. It shouldn't even be labeled a Chevrolet under those conditions. It should be labeled a Cadillac.
I believe there's a contingent inside General Motors that would prefer it not be called Chevrolet.
Well, just like, and just like
most
Ram
only
spinning off
refer
from
to
Dodge.
it as Corvette.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Within General Motors, it really is just referred to as Team Corvette or Corvette.
Yeah, there's always,
you very rarely hear anyone say Chevrolet Corvette anymore. It is.
I can't remember who wrote the book All Corvettes Are Red, which was a book on the development of the C5. And I know it goes back to at least his day. Was that Dave McClellan or something? The author of that book has since passed away. It wasn't.
No, it's not. It wasn't McClellan. It was.
The author.
I'm gonna look it up because I should know.
Was not part of the team, but was able to watch the team. But he brings up that there was conversation at that time of making Corvette its own brand, which I think it's the Cadillac dealerships were the big ones pushing that because they want to be able to sell the Cadillac, hence the XLR. And I just saw a post about an XLRV.
Well, yeah,
which
a car for every purpose doesn't work if you put a $100,000 car in with your cheap and cheerful Sonic and whatever.
It was James Schefter.
So that's the book author, is it not? That's not the Corvette designer. So,
oh, you're asking who said All Corvettes Are Red? I thought you were asking who wrote the book.
No, I was talking about the book, but I was trying to say he was present during the C5, which was, I can't remember who designed the C5, because the book All Corvettes Are Red was about the development of the C5.
Right, it is. But I think I don't want to get it wrong, so I'm trying to see if I can find it. But I want to say that Jerry Burton may have had some involvement in this whole thing.
So.
Well, anyway, give me the screen headlights cars with the XK120 styling. That's the peak of the Corvette.
Yeah, and like you said, at that time, Blue Flame 6 was used in, like you said, the Bel Air and everything. And the only unique thing about the Corvette was everything else. The body.
Well, I mean, in fairness, it wasn't even just a normal 235. It wasn't the engine you'd find under the hood of the Bel Air. It was the same bore and stroke, but it had triple side drive carburetors and more compression and dual exhausts and a higher lift cam. I mean, it was unfortunately paired with a power glide, but it was the 50s. Like automatic was the thing more than manual. So would it have been cool if they had offered, a Wayne 12-port head and an Oldsmobile 3-speed behind it? Yeah, and I'd still love to see somebody build that car. There was a pretty good looking 53 replica on the market for a while that I thought would have been a great basis for a start of a period correct what if. The closest I've seen is there was a car running around that I think had been some kind of performance build back in the day that had Brooklyn's windscreens, and that was a pretty slick looking car. I saw that at the Detroit Autorama one year, I think. We've lost Derek to the research gods.
Sorry. Yeah. Well, and I read the book years ago, right? While I was at the museum. And as you say, Dave, things disappear out of your mind. But John, I'm not sure if you're thinking of, a lot of the book is about Bob Stempel, who saved Corvette, right? Bob was the guy who actually basically laid it out that he put his job on the line to save Corvette for the C5. But then, of course, it goes into the story of, Cafaro and Peters and all those guys, doing the design work behind the scenes in secret.
Yeah. See, I read the book when it was first published, which was before I ever met you, Derek. So we're probably talking 17, 20 years ago. And I'm lucky to remember what I watched on TV last night.
Right.
Except when they do stupid things like drive in 1923 into Montana in the winter, which if you've listened to our last episode, I really went off on about that on the show 1923.
Great year.
Well, great.
What?
It was
They're
the
great
peak,
cars
the
in
peak of Model T Ford production.
Model Ts.
I don't know if I think they
We
used,
can't have all have axles that shatter like glass, Derek.
this
Peerless was making a pretty nice V8 in 1923. So
and it's
You
weird.
could afford a Peerless.
In the show 1923, a lot of the cars they show are not T's, and you would have thought they would have stuck a few T's in there. But
Well,
I think
if my experience seeing 20s shows is common, I mean, like the Untouchables is set in like 1926, and half the cars in it are Model A's.
they're pre-production.
Yeah, very pre-designed.
prototypes.
While I dislike the man Taylor Sheridan, who's the producer of Yellowstone 1923, 18, whatever, he's usually pretty accurate, and I believe all of these cars are like 1918 to 1923 production. I can't tell you the models,
And some are earlier. And I can guarantee you that they are all very accurate and all before 1923 because I know the gentleman that provided the cars for the show.
yes. See, told you.
Well, that's a refreshing change, quite frankly. Plus, there just can't be that many non-Ford early 20s cars running around out there in stock condition anymore. I mean, you just don't see them.
Derek hoards them all in his little barn.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. Well, if you guys would come to Old Car Festival, you would realize that there are more of those cars out there than you think. Or
Yeah, but they only come out that one
Celebration of
time
Brass.
each year.
Celebration of Brass over at the Gilmore Museum coming up in this summer. You could also go down to Mystic Seaport when they have their show. There's a lot of shows around the country that you'll see a lot of these early cars. That's right, Dave. Get down to Mystic Seaport. Come on.
Derek, you have no idea how little spare time I have.
Yeah, I was the one late for the show.
Yeah.
There's another thing off of our list that I can touch on for a few minutes. high production failures, which I'm not
Like
sure
the
what that
Vega.
goes, but what
I
do
They
you,
was gonna
built a
say
gazillion of
Vega.
them, and they all failed.
I was going to say, what do you think is the biggest automotive failure in history?
This is a business school question, man. I don't know.
Wow, biggest failure in history.
Being a car. I mean,
Financial
The
failure,
Bricklin. It
No,
was
no.
so big, nobody can stop talking about it.
but
Well-
financial failure or like lemons. Like
Well,
what?
yeah, I would
How
say
are we talking failure?
a car that would have been launched with a lot of fanfare that fell flat in the marketplace. It failed to find its buyers.
Is there a timeline on that?
From Da Vinci to today.
Well, it's
No, no,
clearly
I mean,
Kuganov
on how long-
Stingray.
How long it took to be a failure?
Well, if it took long to be a failure, it wasn't a failure, because it's like they don't make a TV show for 8 years and go, we should have canceled that in the first season. Something that was
But
canceled.
what about
in
a
the
car?
first-
But what about a car that runs for nearly 20 years, is a success for a number of those years, but then loses market share and nearly bankrupts and collapses the company?
Oh, I know what he's talking about. He's talking about the Model T.
Exactly.
Doesn't change for 20 years. Almost takes Ford with it. You don't know
Is that-
that because
is that
their
a
only
failure?
accounting system was weighing invoices.
I wouldn't call that a failure, because
Because
See,
it
I
wasn't the car's fault, it was management's fault.
yes. And the car still sold to the day they stopped selling them. I mean, you can't go to a Ford dealership and find a new Model T. Or, well, you probably can go to one Ford dealership and find a brand new Model T.
You
But-
almost could have around the 100th anniversary, but it costs way too much.
But where I get this question is like the Etzel is commonly referred to as one of the biggest automotive failures.
Right, and that was introduced with a lot of hype. I mean, the Etzel was supposed to be, the middle class car that everybody was seeking. But I mean, in reality, not only was it weirdly styled, but the whole middle section of the market was weak in '58. I mean, it was a recession year, and they didn't even differentiate it very well from the Ford or the Mercury. It was, you had weird Mercuries built on the Mercury line and weird Fords built on the Ford line, and neither factory wanted to produce them very well. It was just a perfect storm of factors. But I think the timing was the biggest part. Just when they conceived that car in '52, Oldsmobile, Mercury, Dodge, DeSoto, they were all selling like hotcakes, and all of those brands were starting to slip by '58 because the cheaper cars were getting fancier, like the Ford Fairlane 500, and the fancier cars were getting cheaper. Hence why there are no post-war full classics, because Cadillac and Lincoln and Packard just weren't up to that standard anymore. So that middle was just getting squeezed out.
Now, do you feel like the Chrysler Airflow would have fallen into that?
I mean, that almost did take out Chrysler. And when it had been, a big deal in the 20s, and it never really recovered. I mean, still today, I think you could point at, if the Airflow hadn't happened and they kept their momentum up out of the 20s, they wouldn't belong to Stellantis today. And that's weird, because that was just a styling misstep. I mean, it was just too weird. This beetle-shaped car in '34 was just several steps too far forward. And then you look at the average car of 1938, 4 years later, and it's just as weird looking compared to a '34. But by then, everybody got used to it because they'd taken those 2 steps in the interim.
Mm-hmm.
So then we could jump. I'm going all over the calendar. Ford Pinto. Was that a failure?
Yeah, from the outset, because they didn't even meet their price point, right? Because wasn't it supposed to be under 2,000 pounds and under $2,000?
Well, they tried to make them lighter.
Yeah, by leaving that plastic piece off of the rear axle to protect the gas tank. just sort of like the stabilizer bar in the rear of the Corvair that saved them 50 cents a unit, so they left that off in 60, and then proceeded to market the thing as a sports car.
So was the Corvair a failure?
Yeah, it was. And if it honestly, I think that if it hadn't been for the Monza, it would have died as soon as the Nova came out, because what they wanted was a Falcon fighter, not a proto Camaro.
And Gary pops in here with would a Tucker be classified as a failure?
No, that's called securities fraud. No, I didn't say that. The Tucker, that's so weighted. I don't think people would have bought Tuckers in the numbers that they predicted. I think people are too basically conservative.
I think they would have come out too, if they actually were produced, they would have been too expensive for the market. And who knows what the reliability was. And I think the maintenance would have been high on them. They were probably, wouldn't call them a failure, because I still believe in the conspiracy theory, which ironically, Gary's a big conspiracy theorist, along with me. I think the car would have probably failed if it had made it to production. And then,
I mean, you look at how even more conventional cars in the same vein, like Kaiser and stuff in that era, I mean, they couldn't hack it. And they had all of the advantages that Tucker did not in production volume and supplier relationships and goodwill and things. And I just don't think, all the optimism of the post-war 40s buoyed a lot of people, and all of the car sales that came out of people being starved from the war years made people think it was the time to open a new car company. And it really wasn't.
And Neil pops in here with the Fisker Karma, which I'll even go farther, was the Fisker Ocean.
I never
were
heard
those
of Ocean.
The Ocean actually is a very cool SUV.
Yes,
I liked them.
The Fisker Ocean was the Fisker that they just went bankrupt with. And did you hear the real reason they went bankrupt?
No.
They had subcontracted something to some, unbeknownst to them, some scam artists in China. And basically the scam artists bilked them out of tens of millions of dollars, which was their operating capital. And that's what ended up resulting in the bankruptcy, is that they literally were scammed out of business, or so I have been told.
So if I
do believe the Karma itself might be classified as a failure, because who the hell puts the exhaust pipe in front of the front door, so that in front of the driver's door, so that when you're driving with the window down, all you get to do is breathe.
Exhaust. You must have had bad.
Well, the question is, but the question is, does it make it worse that it failed twice?
It's not that the car failed when twice.
It was.
Well, actually,
yeah, because it was Fisker Karma, and then it was just when they reorganized everything and Heinrich left, it was just the Karma, and that failed.
And then Bob Lutz took it and put V8s in it, and it still failed.
Yeah, exactly.
That might actually
if we're gonna go. Yeah, if we're gonna go mid-century, kind of, Tucker's extremely low production when you think of it, but what about the Chrysler Turbine to add to Chrysler's woes?
I don't think that was a failure, because it never was brought to market. It was a research vehicle, and
a pretty successful marketing stunt for them. I think got them a lot of.
Yeah. I don't.
But the research, that the feedback they got was that people didn't really like the car.
But it didn't stop them. They experimented with turbines right through the 1990s, didn't they?
No, it stopped them.
Yeah, they didn't. No, they didn't really do much turbine stuff.
There wasn't much turbine stuff after the late 60s. Even, Lotus stopped doing it in race cars, and the Chrysler turbine only lasted what 2 model years, and with I can't remember how many 50 examples given to the
Yeah, but
general.
that's just the best known part of the Chrysler turbine project. I mean, they started
Well,
that
right.
stuff in the early 50s. I'm
Yeah, they
pretty
had
sure
some
they kept going
earlier
another
ones.
30 years, and then finally, basically, the government said we're not backing turbines anymore because they're not fuel efficient enough. But
Would a
and I would be willing to bet, given Chrysler's relationship to tank production, that some of the M1A1 Abrams turbine development may come out of that. You know, I realize it's probably a Teledyne design or whatever, but
Well, right, but again, I think the
but
turbine
as an automobile,
moved out of
turbines-
automotive into industrial and military. After the Chrysler turbine, there was not really a lot of automotive research in turbines because the government hearing on turbines was during the turbine marketing work. And that's when the government said, we're done funding this. That's why Chrysler drew back.
I'm going to research this because I am convinced that Chrysler was still doing turbine stuff at least through the 80s.
Do you think a turbine would have worked with today's technology? If in the 60s we had today's technology of fuel management and computer control and that, do you think it might have worked?
I don't know enough about turbines to answer that. I mean, are helicopters more fuel efficient now than they were in the 60s? I imagine that they probably are. So potentially.
As long as you don't get rotor bump.
Now Neil threw
Neil threw
another one out. The DeLorean early on in the comments there.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a flop or?
I mean, did it get a chance to flop in the market, or was it a flop as an industrial concern?
I think it was a flop. I think
it was a flop because the story from people in Cleveland where DeLorean Cadillac was, which was John's brother's dealership, is that the cars that were coming over sat there in the back lot of DeLorean Cadillac forever before they moved. They were not selling.
Nobody wanted one.
The early cars were delivered too soon. You know, it's Johnny Carson's famous for taking delivery of his car and then it leaving him stranded multiple times and even locked in the car on one occasion, which is I think when Carson got rid of his DeLorean. So I don't.
But they never rolled into a pond and drowned anybody, right? So
supposedly 1,000 of them ended up in the pond just off the coast of Ireland.
Yes.
But, I throw that one in there. Neil throws out the EV1. I don't think the EV1s were a flop in the least. I think they served their purpose. They were designed for electric. One I'm working up to, which the DeLorean is a nice precursor to, the Cybertruck.
They can't even sell the ones they've got now, right? Like
Tesla won't
in
even
the process of failing.
Tesla won't even accept them on trade.
Ouch.
You cannot
way to stand behind your product.
You cannot trade your Cybertruck into Tesla to get another Tesla.
I wonder, they supposedly Teslas make the best donors if you're doing an EV conversion on something. So maybe this is the time to buy and part out a bunch of Cybertrucks. Recycle the stainless, take the batteries and the drivetrains out of them. And I'm just increasing the value of the remainder because the market's flooded currently. That's what they say.
And I think everybody who wanted a Cybertruck overpaid for a Cybertruck. And if you haven't sold your Cybertruck, you're going to own it for a long time.
So Chrysler's turbine engine development program ended in 1979.
Okay, so almost the 80s.
The Disappearing Cat said they kept the turbine development till the 80s. So you two agree. 1979, 80s.
Yeah.
Of course, by 1979, Chrysler had some other financial woes, if I remember, with a certain Italian telling Congress, I have 20,000 jobs at $20 an hour. I don't have any at 25, or telling the UAW that. And then we at Chrysler borrowed money the old fashioned way. So I don't think Chrysler had a nickel to even try to do anything with the turbine by 1979.
Well, here's my question.
Yeah.
Because Mazda, of course, is now trying to do work with rotary engine and hybrid technology. Would turbine hybrid technology be worth it?
Again, I don't know enough about turbines to answer the question.
I don't know.
I mean, do they use them in railroad engines? That's sort of my standard. I mean, I think of the modern hybrid as being akin to a diesel electric locomotive in a way.
See, I think
really most of locomotive is diesel electric, which of course, when you look at diesel electric hybrid, of course, look at the VW XL1, and that was an incredible car. What really kind of, I think, killed it was the fact that Dieselgate occurred. So
now, see,
so was it good or was it just cheating?
No, it's a good car. It does what it was. It's a diesel electric. It's a good car.
My concern with turbines has always been exhaust temperatures. You know, we even had a jet bike at the museum when I was there. Well, they still have it when I was there. And, you know, same one Leno owns, where he's talked about melting the cars behind him, which is kind of, I think, a story, but you're capable of doing that. You know, if you pulled up behind a jet bike and say your 80 Dodge Omni 024 with its plastic front grille, I do believe that would melt if you got too close to the car. If you're 5 or 6 feet behind it, I don't think it would get up to that temperature.
Well, and I would also say probably if you were in your jet bike sitting at a light and maybe you weren't necessarily letting it sit at idle, but you were giving it a little throttle and creating more exhaust heat, that might be an issue too.
That's crazy. I've never heard a motorcyclist just rev up their bike for no reason.
Me either. No, especially if it's a turbine. You know,
Wee.
Disappearing Cat said Volvo experimented with turbines up until 1993.
I know. I need to look into this. I've never heard that.
I know the first turbine powered ship was called
hybrid.
Turbinia.
And Neil's also saying that Cybertrucks are $10K off right now. Is that the premium line, or is that the new cheap truck that they just introduced, which happens to be, you know, it's like single motor, whatever, and it's coming in at 70 grand, which is still more than what like a launch edition Cybertruck will sell for on the used market. Got to give it to Elon.
Couldn't have happened to a nicer bunch of people.
So, well, we're coming up on 60 minutes.
It doesn't feel like it. It feels like it's only been about a half hour.
Dave and I had a long conversation in our last episode, and I don't know if Derek had opportunity to listen, but just to let you know, Dave, I do not own a blue Transit Connect. I'm
sorry to hear that.
I did take it back to the dealership. I did almost have a red Transit Connect.
Those are cool. I think those are cool vans. I dig the Transit Connect.
I love them. I drove the short wheelbase, the blue one. And when I moved my stuff out of my black car to take it for an overnight test drive, I kind of filled the cargo area. And I go, maybe I do need a bigger van. And then why I still had it on the 24-hour test drive, we loaded an end table and a wire patio table in the back of it, and they barely fit. And I'm going, within 24 hours, I've told myself twice I need to get the long wheelbase. So the red one I looked at was actually a 7-passenger people with 80,000 miles. It would have been $21,997 out the door, including the 150,000 mile bumper to bumper warranty from CarMax. So yeah, CarMax charges a little bit more for their cars, but their warranties are to die for. But I ended up walking away from that one too. So
Can I just comment briefly that I love, at least on my end, that Dave's camera has frozen with him having a giant smile on his face.
Dave's camera's frozen like that multiple times this episode. It's always
Wow.
with him grinning. It's not with him picking his nose or anything. It's always with him with
Right? Yeah.
clown face.
Tongue sticking out. Yeah.
So to finish my story, I do have a 2025 Ford Maverick hybrid on a
Good
lease,
God.
which I said I would never own an electric vehicle without a lease. So, and it seems stupid with a 4.5-foot bed, but do you realize full-size trucks, unless you really, really dig, all come with 5-foot beds? So what the hell's the difference there?
Well, only if it's what most of us refer to as a crew cab, a true four-door. If you get a regular cab or an extended cab, cab and a half, whatever they want to call it, then you get typically the 6.5-foot bed, depending on what manufacturer it is.
Yes, but I wanted 4 doors.
Well, we all want 4 doors.
And I did buy a bed mat and a tonneau cover for it. So I have bought all the customizing pieces.
There you go. You did your accessorize.
Why not?
But
Why not a bed tom? Huh? Why has it got to be a bed mat?
because I don't like Toms.
Okay.
But I will say that Ford says you'll start getting your ideal gas mileage at about 4,000 miles. And since I'm going to drive this thing maybe on Saturdays, maybe on Sundays for 20 miles, it'll be a long time before I get there. It does. I've got about 2,000 miles on it because I bought it. Well, no, I got it on a test drive, and then they had issues because of my accountant with some financing on it, and they let me take it, and they knew I was driving to Illinois to see my mom. So I brought it back to them, and I got 1,700 miles on the thing, and they go, well, we're having some trouble. I could have just given it to them and walked away, but I felt bad for them. So we came to it. We figured out the problems and came to a deal. So I put a lot of miles on it really quick. But in that 1,700 miles I've put on this thing, I've run over 230 of them in a full electric. So I'm kind of happy with that. It's be able to run 15% of the time, 18% of the time in full electric, while most of that driving was on the interstate. When I'm driving city, I'm usually getting 50% to 60% of the drive on electric, which feels kind of good because it's like free. I don't have to plug it in or anything. It just charges itself. So I'm kind of happy with right now I'm averaging 38.7 miles a gallon, and I should be able to get it into the mid 40s when it gets fully broken in. So
Nice.
That's my newest toy. I made it 2.25 years without buying a car.
Long dry spell for you.
That's a record.
That is a long dry spell. And that's why I counted my cars again today, because I'm half tempted. I'm working on vanity plates and I can't figure out the vanity plate, which probably is going to be 53 at 53. 53rd vehicle at 53 years old.
Yep.
So back with my F-150, I had number 42 for you Doug Adams fans out there.
The meaning of life and all that.
So any other news or anything else we want to cover this evening, or are we going to jump off and See you all again here next week. Y'all.
I think it was a great show. A little short tonight, but it's all right.
Yeah, kind of like the host in the bottom center.
Also short.
Short.
Too short.
Pretty sure I'm taller than you, John.
Yeah, you probably are. Most
Yeah.
people.
Last time we saw each other, pretty sure I'm taller than you.
Yeah, but I see my height's great because I can fit in just about anything I want to drive.
That is a nice advantage.
I can fit into anything as well. And I can guarantee you that because I work at Lane Motor Museum and I've driven some of the smallest cars in the world.
Is that
The
a
most
too short
ridiculous
song
car.
too?
What?
Is that a too short song too?
I don't know what he's yapping about.
Yeah, he just said something intelligible and dove off screen.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what I thought because
Actually,
we
he
were
didn't. He just stepped down off the stool.
We were talking too short, and I started, too short, the rapper. And then we talked about Get In Where You Fit In, which ironically is a too short song.
Ah. Cultural above my, sorry.
Well, you know what? At this time of night, I'm going to go get in my bed that I fit in and go to sleep.
Capital idea.
I saw you standing
Everyone,
on the block.
have a wonderful night.
We're out of here, so you know what to do. Get off your ass, burn some gas, because we are out if the button